Good evening, gentle listener or watcher, and welcome to my cEDH review of the Final Fantasy Universes Beyond MTG set. To inform you, I know very little about the Final Fantasy lore. I was there during the 2-hour livestream at PAX, and I know some general info from pop culture, but I did recently play Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, and loved it. Also, I want to do a 15 and 16 run one day, but enough about that. Let's look at some new and fresh Magic cards. And like every great adventure, we begin our fantastic journey in the starting town, which is a new land type named Town, and it enters tapped unless it's your first, second, or third turn of the game. It taps for colorless, or you can tap it, pay 1 life, and add 1 mana of any color. On its face, it's a 5-color pain land like Spire of Industry, without the limitations, however. I must say that each set we're getting cooler and cooler lands, and remember, unlike City of Brass and Mana Confluence, it doesn't always have to hurt you. So yeah, 3 or more color decks will play this to help fix their colors. I myself have been playing less and less of Confluence and City, and I think this will even replace Tarnished Citadel completely. The small restriction that it comes in tap on the 4th turn or beyond won't hinder it that much, but only time will tell. The hype for this land is high. Emet-Selch Unsundered. For 1 a blue and a black, you get a 2/4 legendary creature with vigilance. On enter or attack, draw a card and discard a card. At the beginning of your upkeep, if your graveyard has 14 or more cards, transform into Hades, Sorcerer of Eld, which is a 6/6 with vigilance and the ability Echo of the Lost. During your turn, you may play cards from your graveyard. Then there is a separate ability. If a card or token will be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So yeah, Emet-Selch, if you get to flip him, is a Yawgmoth's Will in the command zone, but that flip of 14 cards and that it only happens during your upkeep is not that favorable. Sure, there is a Displacer Kitten line, so in your upkeep you flip him, then you cast an extra turn spell either from your graveyard or from your hand. The Displacer Kitten will blink him back to the front side, and thus it will not get exiled when it enters the yard after resolving, because again, that ability to exile the card is on his back. You can basically take extra turns forever until the game is over, but that setup might take way too long. It is, however, an interesting commander, but not meta breaking. If it had a red identity also, it might be even better. But speaking of Grixis, we got Kefka Court Mage. For 2 a blue and a black and a red, you get a 4/5 legendary creature. On enter or attack, each player discards a card, and you draw a card for each card type discarded. And then for 8 generic mana, each opponent sacrifices a permanent, then transform into Kefka, Ruler of Ruin, which is a 5/7 with flying, and whenever an opponent loses life during your turn, you draw that many cards. 5 mana Kefka is for sure interesting. In the early game, the value generation may not be that great because your opponents can agree on what to discard, but remember, it says card types. It may not happen often, but staples like, Esper Sentinel or Urza Saga have multiple card types, and that's something to look at. As a bonus, you can always increase your draws by playing Waste Not. But also remember, Kefka's trigger says all players, so you can play around that a little bit. And also, eventually you can keep looting once your opponents have no cards in hand. And here we go again, because we're breaking Displacer Kitten. I just mentioned it recently, here it is again. The cat that keeps on giving. Also, obviously in Grixis you got access to other World Breach combos, since Grixis is a great polar pairing. And even if for 5 mana it is competing with Crom X, it is still an interesting look and a new and probable very playable commander. However, the backside, I think you can literally ignore as if it doesn't even exist. The flip is expensive and can be interacted with easily, so just focus on the front. Disrupt your opponents, draw cards, fill your yard, and breach them out. Vivi Ornitier. For 1 a blue and a red, you get a 0/3 legendary creature that once during your turn you can pay 0 and add X mana, and that X is equal to Vivi's power. Second ability, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Vivi, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Basically, welcome to a very push commander that gets great both in the 99 and in the command zone. Manual Storm, eat your heart out. You can play this in your Krark decks as a finisher, or play Krark and the other trigger doublers that Krark usually plays, like Veyron, to deal even more damage and get more counters for mana. I know there's a combo with Quicksilver Elemental to add infinite mana, but neither of them draw cards, which is why I prefer the Kark-esque shell. You can want to flip for your free spells and actually lose the flip because the trigger will still be there to deal the damage and get the counter. And if you run out of free spells, you can then activate Vivi to get more mana and do more shenanigans. I think it can even slot into Vadric decks as an enabler, but I'll let the manual Storm players in the audience speak to how excited they are about this card. You can also play like Ye Old Niv-Mizzet, Parun with Curiosity combos to draw, but it also needs a little build around. Think about that when you go singing spells with Vivi. I did mention the 99 a few times, so let's look at the legend build for the 99. Namely, Matoya, Archon Elder. For 200 blue, you get a 1/4 legendary creature with whenever you scry or surveil, you get to draw a card. So Matoya turns scry and surveil into card advantage, synergizing with commanders like Thrasios or Glarp. Sure, it's a little build around and not every deck has that many surveil/scry effects, but I feel this card has legs and will be a powerful engine, sooner or later. If only we had a DRC-like card in the command zone. Wait, we do? Golbaz, Crystal Collector, is a legendary creature for blue and a black. It's a 1/4, and whenever an artifact you control enters, you get to surveil 1. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more artifacts, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And then, if you control 8 or more artifacts, each opponent loses life equal to that card's power. I do wish I returned the creature to the battlefield, but we can't have everything, I guess. The first ability is enough, because welcome to Golbaz's Eggland. Play cheap artifacts, surveil, fill the yard, and maybe add some reanimation? Remember, you can also play artifact lands to basically become surveil lands. Sounds like a fun commander, and you can draw cards with Matoya, or even maybe play with your Emet-Selch. I think you can build a very powerful engine with this, and I do want to try this one. Also, bonus, if you have a Depth Shadow and 8 artifacts, well, hitting your opponents for 13 sounds hella fun. At least to me. Up next we got Black Mage's Rod. It's an equipment for 1 and a black with the new Job Select mechanic. So when it enters, it creates a 1/1 hero token and equips itself to that creature. The equipped creature gets +1/+0 and deals 1 damage to each opponent whenever you cast a non-creature spell. And that token is a wizard too, and then it has equip free. Originally I wanted to say maybe Kark Timna might want this, but then it hit me. It shines with Emet-Selch's Captive Kingpin, turning non-creature spells you cast into damage triggers which turn into more cards, which you in turn can turn into more damage and more fuel. Think of this equipment as a 2-mana creature, because if the hero dies, you can equip it to something else. And yes, there are more Job Select type equipment in the set, but this one stood out to me the most for what it does and where it doesn't. And speaking of Emet-Selch, Avalanche of Sector 7. For 200 red, you get a star-free legendary creature with Menace. Its power is equal to the number of artifacts your opponents control. And whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact they control, Avalanche of Sector 7 deals 1 damage to that player. I did just mention an artifact heavy deck, and now we get its opposite. There are 3 fun characters, namely Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. I told you I play Final Fantasy VII. On this card. This punishes artifact heavy decks anytime they activate a rock or anything. And, well, you know, that 1 damage, you know what that means? Emet-Selch! I did just talk about you. Also, it fits a Punisher style decks where you play cards that ping your opponents anytime they basically do anything. However, that kind of deck still doesn't really exist, but I think you have enough cards to start cooking. Also, this card can quickly become a strong beat stick. And now I have to move on because I keep remembering the game and these 3. And all I can think about is that Jesse still owes me a goddamn pizza. Noctis, Prince of Lucis, I think. I hope I didn't butcher that. For 1, a blue and a black and a white, you get a 4/3 legendary creature with lifelink, and this following juicy ability. You may cast artifact spells from your graveyard by paying 3 life, in addition to paying their other costs. If you cast a spell this way, that artifact enters with a finality counter on it. For those who don't know, a finality counter means if it goes to your graveyard from the battlefield, it gets exiled. Did I mention a lot of reanimator decks? Well, Noctis fuels an artifact storm deck, recurring cards like Aetherflux Reservoir, and you can go infinite with it really fast. You can pair Hex Parasite with Lionside Diamond to remove the finality counters, enabling an infinite loop, or cast a Monk's Diamond and never discard a land so it never hits the field. Sure, you have to keep paying life, but the reservoir will quickly out-heal the life flow so you can defeat the table. You can also use Vexing Bubble and cast 0 mana rocks. It will get countered, return to your graveyard, and here we go, I created the loop again. Esper has so many tools to get you there, tutors and everything, and I'm also marking this one as something I want to play on my channel. Moving on to Terra, Magical Adept, a new 5-color commander. On its front, it's a 4/2 legendary for 1 red and a green, with when Terra enters, mill 5 cards, put up to 1 enchantment card, mill this way into your hand, and for 4 a red and a green, then tap it, you can exile Terra and return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. And on the backside, it's an enchantment saga creature with 4 chapters and flying. The first 3 chapters have: create a token that's a copy of target non-legendary enchantment you control, it gains haste. If it's a saga, put up to 3 lore counters on it. Sacrifice at the beginning of your next end step. Then the final ability is why it's the 5-color commander, so you can add white, blue, black, red, and green, exile Esper Terra, and then return to the battlefield on its front face. Whew, that's a lot of text. Basically, Terra's front side sets up food chain combos by milling and retrieving enchantment, namely Underworld Breach. So if you have 5 mana, 3 for the food chain, and obviously you have a food chain creature like Scree ready to go, and then you have 2 for the breach, you can mill your deck and assemble one of the many breach lines. On the flip side, literally, you can use Spark Double to make as many copies as you want of Esper Terra with haste. I also heard many people are trying a fancy and fun way to flip Terra, as shown on screen for the viewers. Also, not sure if Celes wants this or many of the other cheap legends that I have mentioned earlier, but the front should be enough to get you a win. And also, Food Chain just wins games. Let's see if I'll try this one. Or will you? Let me know. The next card on my list, I won't even try to pronounce, so stick with me. Lucis Sacrifice, an instant for a blue with, as an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a legendary creature, or pay 2. Counter target activated ability, triggered ability, or non-creature spell. The only reason I bring this one up is for the blue Rock Rack decks, where sacking Rog for anything is par for the course. I've seen many words of both hype and non-hype uttered on the internet for this card. Personally, I doubt we will see much play outside of playtesting, but I'm sure in those cases where it works, it will be great, and for those who wanted it, they will be happy. Or it will be unplayable. Either way, I don't know. I'm just here talking about fresh new cards, so we'll see what happens. Speaking of playtesting, here is a funny card, Esper's to Magicite. It's an instant for 3 and a black with exile each opponent's graveyard. When you do, choose up to 1 target creature card, exile this way, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's an artifact and loses all other card types. 4 mana is very steep to basically hose your opponent's graveyard, but the fun upside to this is that many decks are trying their devoted druid combos via graveyards with Cauldron or Brewmaster, so you can literally steal that. That will happen like once or twice in 10 games, but also in general, sometimes creating a token of a creature that ends up not being a creature just to get its ETB effect may be interesting. Maybe you steal a Hullbreaker, who knows. The possibilities are there. It's just that steep mana cost will hold this one back. I'll possibly try it, as I've won games by nabbing something out of an opponent's graveyard before, but we'll see if it ever actually does really anything. And finally, we get to Celes, Rune Knight. For a red, a white, and a black and 1, you get 4/4 legendary creature when Celes enters, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards +1. Whenever 1 or more other creatures you control enter, if 1 or more of them entered from a graveyard or was cast from a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So first ability basically says draw a card regardless of whenever you discard, so that's baseline, but you can fuel your yard with more cards and then obviously draw more cards. Similar to Dihada a little bit. And speaking of Dihada, Celes is a win con in the command zone just like Dihada, with card advantage built in. The second ability basically says persist will win me the game. Let's say you put a sack out on the field, from Vesperasir to maybe Goblin Bombardment, and a persist creature like all-time favorite Murderous Redcap. So you play it, deal damage, sack it, and it returns both with a -1 counter and a +1/+1 counter. They both negate each other, and thus it enters without a counter, and now you can go have your fun. And this should conclude my look at some of the cards from Final Fantasy for cEDH. Hope you enjoyed the list, and if you have any suggestions or if you missed your favorite card, please let me know in the comment section below. And with that, as always, I am Dev. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all behind the veil.